Now, this warlike stance is not uniquely American. Many cultures exalt domination and force over intellect and compassion. But sadly, the common people, dazed, distracted, media drunk, overworked, underpaid, exploited. For them, it can be difficult to know when we are truly threatened or when they're being used as pawns in some absurd political theater. And we become easily led into armed conflict. If, as I believe, war is not the answer, then what is? And what questions should we be asking so war does not become the answer? And I wonder, are today's war on terror and its targets, is this just part of the way our humanity expresses itself? Or is it something new, a next step in belligerent misadventure? There is a history to some of this. On November 1st, 1911, the first bomb ever to be dropped from the air was released. The pattern for the subsequent history of aerial terror bombardment was set. A European power, Italy, bombed a third world country, Libya, targeting non-combatants, Arab tribespeople at an oasis, to terrorize them and thus break their will to resist. Only 4 small bombs were dropped on this historic occasion, but the mission succeeded. And there are some say this is a good use of resources and power. On this day, bombing as a means of terror was established, a strategy whose frequency would quickly escalate. 34 years later, 1945, the world was blasted into a new age with the bombing of Hiroshima, and with the bombing of Nagasaki 3 days later, it became apparent to the world that the human race had not only developed a means by which to render itself extinct, but had found a rationale to justify using it at least twice. Yet, in some ways in 1945, those blasts created a kind of wake-up call. It not only presented the world with nightmares, but also galvanized some people with a strange kind of hope. Many people around the world sensed this opportunity. In 1945, people realized that if we were to survive, we would have to conjure a new way of being, a way that avoids total war. A new sense of cooperation among the peoples of the world needed to be found. And in that spirit, many public intellectuals began proclaiming the futility of war in a technological age. And it was out of some of these discussions that the United Nations was born. But the United States of America was at that time the only real superpower, the only one with nuclear weapons. We had then an opportunity, I'd say a sacred duty, to usher in a great new order, to lead the world to an experiment of resolving international issues without the use of force. That opportunity was not realized as our fears propelled us into the Cold War. But I think we're lucky once again. I think the end of the Cold War has left us, again, the only real superpower, certainly in armaments, and we have a chance to get it right this time. But how do we do that? Of course, that's the question. There is a reflection on this I'd like to share from James Luther Adams, social ethicist and Unitarian theologian. He has 5 steps to peace in his essay, Peace is a Religious Problem, written in 1945. Step 1, preaching in favor of peace and the conditions requisite for it can be effective only when it's accompanied by a critical and prophetic attitude toward the devotions that engender war. It's the obligation of religious leaders to engender hope that peace is possible, that human society can grow and change, that we are able to rise above our baser selves and transcend history. Religion must help define what love is and how we are to apply it. And that love is accompanied by courageous truth-telling and criticism of cultural obstacles to peace. Step 2. This new meaning of peace must emerge from something already existing. Just as some civil rights and peace movements have shown that profound societal change is possible, some excesses of other freedom movements have demonstrated that transformation can't succeed when it seeks to destroy, leaving no foundation on which to rebuild, no source of comfort or solace for the average person caught in the midst, and no familiar institution to which to belong. Indeed, viewing revolution as the answer is usually a sign that we haven't thought this through. Our culture may need to wake up to embody justice, but it doesn't need dismantling. This new way is not something that requires absolute identity of form. This is step 3. In other words, we must create ways of being and governing that inspire creativity and innovation. And we must inspire our culture to remain open to reform and reward compassion and generosity. Step 4, remember, progress must be slow if it's to be sure. Foundational cultural shifts come slowly. We must honor people's emotional time. There must be time for feedback, time for trust to develop, time to just listen. Listen to folks like Keith and those soldiers now returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. We must cultivate humility and deep listening with one another. And step 5, we must look forward to struggle and sacrifice, not to quiet peace. Strife among humans will continue as long as we remain human. A just and lasting peace would be one that contains more conflict, not less. It's just that the conflict will not be armed conflict. If we declare war unacceptable, and the weaker nations of the world see that we are sincere, there will be more grievances proclaimed because the people of the world will feel safe in asking to be heard, knowing we're not going to respond with warfare. There will be more discussions, more negotiations, more international summits, and a just and lasting peace. Constructive, contentious engagement, but not armed conflict. And the United States can help by demonstrating it doesn't always have to get its way. Additionally, James Luther Adams declares, religion must be made safe for democracy. Any religion which has a limited or exclusive view of the human family is a danger to all life. Religion must celebrate that we are inextricably interwoven with all of existence, come what may. It must enable love and peace. Religion needs to help or get out of the way so peace will come. Why is peace so hard? Peace is not merely the cessation of bombings and machine gun fire, though for those caught in that hell, that is a great start. Peace is not an event, it is a process. It is a way of life. It is a cultural shift. Peace arrives not by pronouncement. It is the continuous unfolding of engagement, providing insight into better ways of being. It is the accepting of our responsibility to be peaceful in all our relations and communications. Ultimately, existentially, peace only comes if we honor it as a necessity. Listen to those who've been there, honor their journeys, support them when they return from battle, and let's make sure they go there for a good reason in the first place.